The number of dead rises in the Tunisian museum terrorist attack. Authorities name 2 gunmen they say carried it out. The CRTC is to unveil new rules for cable and satellite providers. The Humber government is pushing for a pick-and-pay system to let consumers choose what they want to watch. And another 50 centimeters of snow hits the Maritimes. Halifax is completely shut down. Government buildings and universities are also closed. Hi and welcome to Humber News. I'm Shai Williamson, coming to you from our newsroom here at Humber College's North Campus. Global reaction today to the assault of Tunisia's National Museum. The number of dead has risen to 23, 20 of them foreign tourists. The militant group ISIS has claimed responsibility. Tourists held hostage yesterday are now preparing to return home. Italian, Japanese, Spanish, and British tourists are among the dead. Tunisia's army has been brought in to secure major cities, and officials have already made 9 arrests in relation to the attacks. A manhunt is underway for 2 or 3 others who may have been involved.
This is the latest example of extremist terror, and we have to fight it with everything we have.
Meanwhile, Tunisians gathered for a candlelight vigil honoring the dead and wounded. The attack comes 4 years after the Arab Spring toppled the former government in the country and kicked off the transition to democracy and free elections. Canadian journalist Mohamed Fahmy was in Egyptian court this morning for the start of his twice-delayed retrial, but it's delayed once more and is now rescheduled for March 25th. Today's session called New Witnesses. Fahmy was working for Al Jazeera English at the time of his arrest. He was detained on charges of aiding a terrorist organization back in 2013. He was jailed in Cairo for over 400 days and gave up his Egyptian citizenship in hopes of being deported back to Canada. An Australian Defence Force has arrived in Vanuatu to start rebuilding after the island was ravaged by a cyclone. Cyclone Pam rode across the island last weekend, bringing in strong winds, rain, and storms. Residents say food and basic supplies are running low, while relief workers are still battling to reach many islands. The number of deaths reached is 11. Aid workers say they're amazed at the low figure, and the Prime Minister remains optimistic.
But I think the important thing is that people survive, and that's the important thing. If we survive, we can rebuild.
Located on the geographically active Ring of Fire, the nation suffers from frequent national disasters. The jury for the Boston Marathon bombing trial gets a look at homemade explosives in courts today. The defense of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev admitted that he took part in the bombing and killed 3 people and injured over 260. But they argued his participation was forced by his older brother, who was killed in 2013. The prosecution presented photos of homemade bombs and improvised grenades. Tsarnaev could face life in jail or the death penalty. United States First Lady Michelle Obama is in Tokyo today for a meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister. As a part of her 3-day trip to Japan, Obama conveyed her condolences to the Japanese victims killed yesterday in the Tunisian attack.
Our hearts go out to the loved ones of those who were lost here in Japan and around the world. They are very much in our thoughts and prayers today.
Obama also announced a partnership between Japan and the U.S. called Let Girls Learn, promoting the education of young women and girls. Next, she will visit Kyoto before going to Cambodia. Here at home, Canada's broadcast regulator is set to reveal the new rules today that may affect the way that we pay for TV. The CRTC will announce its decision this afternoon about how cable and satellite providers sell access to their channels. The federal government has been calling for a so-called pick-and-pay system. That would mean Canadians could pay for only the channels that they actually want to watch. The ruling is a result of hearings the CRTC held in the fall. This may be hard to believe, but this winter was the warmest on record worldwide. This stat comes from the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, but for Atlantic Canada, there seems to be no sign of spring anytime soon. Here's what it looked like yesterday after another 50 centimeters of snow was dumped in Halifax. Amateur video shows huge amounts of snow. Most of Halifax was shut down yesterday. Public transit and university and government buildings are trying to reopen today. Environment Canada says the worst is over. For now. Police headquarters in downtown Toronto was the scene of a small but vocal protest today. The Network for Elimination of Police Violence rallied against what it calls racist policing. Our reporter, Marlene Gomez, is on the scene. How's it going, Marlene?
Shai. So just a few moments ago, we had about 20 people rallying against police violence and racism. They had a live mic and they were chanting, "No peace, no justice, no racist police." I spoke to one of the organization's leaders. Here's what she had to say.
We have a lot of community organizers here and individuals from very marginalized communities in Toronto that have very direct experiences with police violence and police injustice. And so we have people at this rally today that have had experiences from carding to being assaulted, arrested by police officers, and unfairly convicted for things.
The big issue at hand here is carding. So earlier this year, Police Chief Bill Blair announced that they would be suspending the practice of carding, although according to many people that I spoke here, that hasn't happened. Many of them from the Jane and Finch community area say that they're still facing racial profiling. So as part of the live mic session here, they had some supporters go up to the mic and share their experiences. One of the girls was sharing an experience her cousin had where it got very ugly and violent. But overall here at the rally, things were very peaceful. Police stood by in the background and they let the organization get their point across. Reporting live from Toronto headquarters, I'm Marlon Gomez, Humber News. I'll send it back to you guys.
University of Toronto's teaching assistants are back at the picket line today, despite reaching a tentative agreement with the administration late yesterday. Protesters are also blocking off traffic leading in and out of the school's parking lot. This TA says that the tentative agreement hasn't swayed their efforts in getting what they want.
We're looking for the university to provide us with a funding package that brings us to something that is not shamefully below the poverty line for a person living alone in Toronto. So far they've been unwilling to do that, so we're continuing to fight for that.
The union's media spokesperson said that the students at the Scarborough campus are showing their support today.
Today is because the Student Association here organized a walkout and a sit-in in the administration building.
It's a lot more stressful to be here than
President and CEO of the Scarborough Campus Students' Union says that they organized the sit-in because they want to ask the university some bigger questions about education and the support of the TAs.
Why are TAs being shafted? Why are tuition fees going up? Why are national fees not being regulated? Why does the university invest in a lot of problematic companies and profiting off these companies while we're still seeing tuition fees go up and TAs not getting the kind of compensation they deserve?
Smith says despite the support from the other groups have been motivating.
Action at UTM on Tuesday, and yesterday we had a student walkout of about 2,000 students at St. George. Spirits are incredibly high, so that's how we're going into the meeting tomorrow.
Teaching assistants say the proposal includes an increase in funding, but is missing much needed structural changes. Protesters also say because the funding won't be tied into inflation, there's no assurance that they won't be striking in a few years. The search for the next Sherlock Holmes is happening at Humber. Lakeshore campus staged a crime scene for the students at the L Space Gallery this week. Our reporter Celia Grimley has the story.
Murder mystery lovers are getting the chance to investigate a crime scene at Humber College. Faculty from the Criminal Justice, Police Foundations, and Crime Scene Investigation program staged a murder and evidence in the L Space Gallery at Lakeshore campus. Teams will compete to solve the crime by analyzing fingerprints, bloodstains and patterns, the crime scene, and interviews with suspects.
Okay, I'm just going to start off with a few questions.
Doug Thompson, a professor in the Criminal Justice program and one of the event coordinators, says the event is meant to be fun and a learning experience.
Coffee one morning and saying, hey, why don't we do a massive game of Clue and show the difference, showcase the Police Foundations and CSI program, and also show people the difference between real-life CSI and the stuff they watch on TV.
Constable Ricardo Pinto visited the exhibit and says people are lucky to get this experience.
It's definitely fascinating, something I wish was around when I was in school, taking Police Foundations. And I think it's going to be a real eye-opener to a lot of people who aren't even involved in the program.
Coordinator of the CSI program, Rod Spencer, made this video instructing participants how to do a proper investigation. Thompson says teams will be judged on how well they gather and evaluate evidence.
If you've watched the forensics video and you've taken it all in, and then can you work out with the interviews who's telling the truth, who's lying? What happens when the forensics doesn't match the interviews? What do? And come up with your best guess.
CSI student Rocky Brar also offered some advice for those trying to solve the crime.
Always keep an objective mind, right? Don't try focusing to, I think it's this person, I'm going to put all my effort into that. Keep an open mind. Look at where the facts lead you.
Students from within the CSI and Police Foundation programs will compete separately from the general public. The event is open to anyone and teams can compete until the end of the day on Thursday. Winners will be announced Friday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Celia Grimbley, Humber News.
When we come back, we'll tell you what's happening in the world of sports, and Abida Donji will have your 3-day forecast.
Although it may be sunny outside, it's still not as warm as we would hope. Today we'll have a high of 2 and a low of -4. I'll be back with your 3-day forecast after the break.
But first, when you thought that things in the City of Lights couldn't get any sweeter, passengers waiting for their train at one of the largest terminals in Paris got a taste of heaven, a vintage train at a traveling exhibit on chocolate. The train will be visiting every major Paris train station this week, allowing passengers to take a trip through chocolate history.